I'm talking like Oregon Trail, excited to go to the computer lab, excited to go play this game and learn, and you're not even realizing that you're learning anything. That is why I think this game is so awesome, and that's why I think it's so fantastic, and that's why I continue to use those two words, because it makes the learning fun. Let's get into what Kerbal Space Program is first, and then I'll explain why I love it so much. So Kerbal Space Program is a space flight simulator that was put out like 2011 as an early access game, and then was released in 2015. It got an update in 2019, in April of 2019, and it's got 2 expansion packs. Making History and Breaking Ground. Making History is like all the historical NASA flights and historic spacecraft. Really, that's like traveling through time in a history book right there. Huge monumental steps in human history, not United States history, not Russian history, human history, making spaceflight. And then Breaking Ground is all about the research and the science and landing on other planets and how to do these like long, prolonged science experiments. It's really cool. It's really interesting. But okay, why is Kerbal Space Program so great? Its graphics are meh. It's on Steam. It's on Xbox. It's on consoles. It's fun, but it's not a first-person shooter. It's a space sim, and like you just kind of do things, right? There's 3 modes in Kerbal Space Program. Actually, I take that back. There's 4 modes in Kerbal Space Program. There's the tutorials, there's the sandbox mode, there's career mode, and there's science mode. So as you go down these, the tutorials will teach you all the basics that you need to know about the game. Very informative, very fun to play, kind of just step by step, and it takes you from the very basics of building a spacecraft through launching the spacecraft, orbit, re-entry, going to the moon, orbiting the moon. It does all this stuff, and it walks you through it, and it teaches you very quickly. It's awesome. The sandbox mode just lets you build everything that's in the game. Every space part, every spacecraft that you have, you can mess with, you can try and put it together, see if you can get the aircraft to balance, and then launch it into space, which is a lot of fun. I typically blow up a lot whenever I do that. And then you have science mode, which is kind of like the historic version of Kerbal Space Program. So you go through and you start with a very simple set of tools, and the more science experiments that you're able to do, the more successful launches that you have, the more points that you get, and you can unlock more science abilities, you can unlock more technologies, more materials. Basically, you just get smarter because you continue to get results in, and you understand more about the game. So you get more expanded abilities as you understand the physics of spaceflight better. And then career mode takes that science mode and it puts into a career aspect. So like you get reputation on top of your science technology, and if you do well, then you get reputation faster. If you do poorly, you're not gonna get great missions. So basically, career mode, if you do well, like the missions get harder, you get greater rewards. It's like real life. If you run the company poorly, it's gonna tank. So what is it about the experience in Kerbal Space Program that makes it such a great game? As a kid, we grew up with space games, we grew up with space movies. Why are we hooked on space? What is so great about space? Well, we have Star Trek, Star Wars, Starfighter, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Battlestar Galactica, Stargate 1, Battlestar Galactica, the remake, Gravity, Armageddon. Yeah, I threw out Armageddon, I'm sorry. For anybody who's a physicist and actually likes space, I'm very sorry I even mentioned Armageddon. I will go banish myself right now. I'm not going to banish myself, that's just awkward. We grew up with all those shows, we grew up with all those games, and we want to go to space. Who as a kid is thinking like, I can go to space? It's the potential. Humankind can reach space. We've landed people on the moon. We've achieved orbit. We have a space station that's orbiting right now. We have thousands of satellites. Like, it's there. It's within our grasp. It takes a lot of learning and education, and it's really hard, and there's a lot of gateways to becoming somebody that has all this knowledge on how to achieve spaceflight. But what if there was an easier way to learn it, or to get people interested in learning it? That's where Kerbal Space Program comes in for me. I really like this game because it's something I'm interested in. I really like space. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy too, but I really love sci-fi. I'm a unabashed Star Wars nerd. And this game goes through and it teaches simplified orbital mechanics very easily because it's a visualization of it. It goes through and it shows you what you're going to do, and this visualizer just says, hey, if you make this change, it's going to change the orbit this way, or it's going to change the energy this way. You need to understand delta V, which is the difference in velocity between two different objects, and this is how it's going to interact, and you're either going to do X, Y, or Z based on these actions, and there's a lot of variables, but the game scales from easy to like PhD level, which is, I mean, it's great. So if you want to play with your kid, you put it on easy and you start going through the basics, and then as they get older and they get the concepts, you can start scaling up the difficulty and they understand this more. Who wants their kid to be successful on like STEM or STEAM, whatever you want to call it these days? Like math, technology, engineering, all that type of stuff. This is the game to get them into so that they want to do some type of STEM or some type of STEAM career field or something, if that's one of the aspects. But I mean, really, let's think about this. Like, your first step in going into space is achieving orbit. Like, you have to make it into, well, I mean, first you have to make it into the air. Like, you achieve orbit, and then you got to make re-entry. That's step one. And that's moderately difficult, but it's a prerequisite for everything else that's going to come. And then you go and you try and orbit the moon. Well, cool. That takes a lot of math, though, because the Earth is moving, you have gravity, you're trying to escape orbit, you're trying to make orbit around the moon, then you're trying to come back, achieve orbit around the Earth, and do re-entry. All right. Well, that was a little more complicated. Well, you want to land on the moon? Okay, well, now you got to do all that except land on the moon, launch off the moon, achieve orbit again, leave orbit from the moon, achieve orbit around the Earth, and do the same thing. What Kerbal Space Program did is it took all those problem sets, it simplified it. It has Kerbal is a smaller planet, the moon for them is a smaller moon, and you can do all of these things, and it helps you and it visualizes, and you can get mods to help you do this as well. But it's a very complex problem, but it simplifies it to the point that you can do it and it makes it fun and intuitive. Visually see the feedback. Basically, it just makes it a fun, interactive, and rewarding experience to go through and try and make it to the moon or make it to Mars, which is Duna? I mean, I really have a hard time with words. Another aspect of this is you can have a ton of different goals in Kerbal Space Programs. You can have your personal goals like reaching Mars, achieving orbit around the sun itself, trying to reach different planets farther out. You have the science goals, so achieving the actual goals within the science play mode. You can have the story goals, which is the career mode. Like, there's a ton of different stuff to do. The gamification of learning is like the number one aspect of this, because let's talk about who sat through geometry and algebra, and then you had calculus, and then you go into physics, and like, who wants to sit for that many years in a classroom learning math all the time just to go to space? It's not a fun way to learn. If you can make learning fun and interactive and visually stimulating, you're doing something right. And Kerbal Space Program does that, and I love that about Kerbal Space Program. That is why I think this game is so awesome, and that's why I think it's so fantastic, and that's why I continue to use those two words, because it makes the learning fun. And I'm not talking like kind of fun. I'm talking like Oregon Trail, excited to go to the computer lab, excited to go play this game and learn, and you're not even realizing that you're learning anything. And that comes back to that aspiration about teaching space, about teaching orbital mechanics, about going and being an astronaut, about maybe being the first person to actually land on Mars. Like, that's an insane goal. That would be awesome. And this is part of the reason why NASA has a partnership with the companies that make Kerbal Space Program. Making History is in partnership with NASA, and NASA helps them with some of the formulas. And they actually use the simplified mechanics, and it's conic physics. There's a comic specifically about how Kerbal Space Program makes it so much easier to actually learn orbital mechanics and physics. So what does the game do? as a game, that's fun. Well, okay, visually, graphically, the game's a solid B. It came out in 2015. It got some updates recently in 2019 in April. Then it got a second expansion in June of 2019. Both very good. The other thing that on PC, it's very mod friendly, and there's a ton of mods out there. And what these mods do is they allow for improved graphics, improved physics, improved math helpers, orbital mechanic helpers. Mods can put these things into the game, and you can actually launch them and go into orbit. You can build bigger ships in orbit if you can figure out how to launch the cargo up there. It's really, really cool what you can do with all these mods and expand the game and expand your horizons and see, is this actually feasible? Like, can I do this? Can I launch 30 million tons of cargo efficiently? And the thing with Kerbal Space Program is, like, you can use the visualizer and brute force your way into space, or you can try and finesse your way into space much the same way that the European Space Program and NASA and all the governments are trying to do, because it's so much cheaper to finesse your way into space. The rating for this game is E for everyone, and it really, you can simplify it down to a young kid and be like, hey, we can put this together and you can launch this thing into space, and start kind of getting them into this at a younger age, like 6 or 7 or 8. And then as they get older, you can continue to increase the difficulty so that it continues to engage them. It's going to keep them in the flow of building the spacecraft and challenging them and challenging their abilities to think through the problem and figure out how to do it. And they don't have to sit there with pen and paper and do math. They can if they want to. Full on, like, you can do the math and make these things super efficient, or you can just use the visualizer and kind of feel your way through the problem. Both ways work. It's great. There's no microtransactions. Yep, there's 2 expansions for it. 2 expansions cost about $15 each. Absolutely, the game's about $15. If you wait on Steam, the game's usually on sale. The last expansion pack was not on sale during the Steam 2019 summer sale, but I expect it'll probably be on sale this winter, maybe next spring. Parental controls. The only real thing that I would say is kind of a parental control, the little Kerbal green men dying, and you can turn that on and off. You never really see it, but say you crash a spaceship, you don't want to talk about that, like why do the little green men keep disappearing? You can just turn that off and it'll be fine. You just revert to last save and you're like, hey, let's try it again. That's really the only thing that you have a hard time tackling that issue that's there. And let's be honest, like, you have little green spacemen launching off of an alien planet going into space, and they're fun. They're cute little dudes, and they can go in space and do spacewalks, and they can go land on the moon, and they can go in a little go-kart and drive around the moon, or they can walk around the moon, or they can go to Mars. I don't know how much more to say there is to love about this game. There's so many good things about Kerbal Space Program. I've only hit the surface of it. There are tons of YouTube channels out there that are dedicated to Kerbal Space Program and speed builds. I highly recommend going and watching them. Some of these guys build some incredibly fancy ships. I wish we could build this stuff in real life and launch it into space. If you have any inkling or desire or curiosity about space, about orbital mechanics, this is the game for you. So some goal is like, hey, I want to launch a rocket into the sun, and I'm just going to aim it at the sun. I'm going to blast off straight into space, and it's going to be fine, and it's just going to go directly into the sun, because we're thinking in terms of Earth gravity. If I point something at an object, it's going to go straight at that object, and it's just going to hit it. Well, it doesn't really work that way. This game will teach us, and our kids, like, it will teach you that you're going to use up all your energy, and the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to achieve a stable orbit around the sun. Whereas we think, like, to achieve orbit, you're going straight up, and that's it. It's not really that way. You're actually moving sideways really, really fast. And once you understand the orbital mechanics, this game just unlocks whole new potential for everything that you want to do. It's mind-blowing in the fact that I just launched a rocket at the sun, and I can't actually get to the sun because I didn't do the calculation and use the visualizer to figure out what energy I need to achieve the correct path so I can actually land into the sun. And to be honest, it takes a lot of energy to do that. It takes a lot of energy to also slow down around Mars, or else I'm just going to end up slingshotting around the planet and leaving its orbit and going off somewhere randomly into space. I really want to stress the fact that you don't have to know rocket science. You don't have to know all the equations. You don't have to know the math behind it. You just have to want to continue to expand your horizons and pushing forward and trying to figure out what that is going to look like. But basically just trying new things and failing and trying something new and failing and trying something new and failing and trying something new again and getting it to succeed because you were able to learn through your mistakes and it didn't cost the government $80 billion. I appreciate that. As a taxpayer, I appreciate not spending $80 billion. Hey, anyway, this has been Ridir Gaming and we'll see you next time. Dude, stop. We're not doing it. Not asking for it. You gotta stop. Why do you keep pushing for this? Nobody ever does it without being prompted. They just don't hit the button. La 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 la. They never hit it. Tell them to stop.